Hi, everybody, and welcome back. Today's guest is somebody who, like me, is passionate about the mindset side of health and wellness. So I'm really looking forward to today's talk. My guest is Nikola Howard. Nicola is one of the most inspiring and experienced health and wellness coaches in the UK. And she's going to talk to us today about all things low carb, keto, and carnivore. Nicola has won awards for her coaching work and has been recognised for the groundbreaking changes she brings to the world of coaching, including her HOPE protocol, which stands for Healthy, Optimal, Purposeful Eating. That is such a great name for a protocol. Nicola is going to chat about her own journey to health and weight loss and how she came to self-medicate with sugar. And let's face it, it is a drug, and plenty of us have been drawn in by it. We'll also talk about calories in and calories out and how this keeps us fixed in the mindset of, well, if we fail, it must be because we're not good enough or not working hard enough or at eating less, or we've failed because we must try harder to exercise more, and all of the horrible self-talk, which just keeps the finger of blame pointing back at ourselves when in fact, it was never about us being failures in the first place. It was always the incorrect food which has let us down. So there's a lot to talk about today. So welcome, Nicola, and thank you so much for agreeing to chat with me today. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me for a conversation. I am hale, whole, and hearty, generally speaking. Life is good.
Brilliant. So glad to hear it. So glad to hear it. So to get things started, please could you give us a little bit of a background piece into your own journey to finding low carb and perhaps what struggles you had to overcome?
Of course. My I think the start of my journey is pretty much like anyone that is around my age. I am 53 in a month as of recording this. And so I was a typically chubby little girl. I was stick thin until I hit about 10ish, and then I turned into a little barrel with like literally just round in the middle. And then my mum got into a relationship with my stepfather, who was my stepfather for seven years. I think he was around for about 10 years. And we used to like making cakes and eating ice cream and all the lovely sweet things that came along with that. There was a lot of sort of just generally big food going on. Of course, this was the 80s, so a lot of it was sort of generally what you might call more on the natural side. There wasn't a lot of fake food going on, but gosh, there was a lot of ice cream going on. And definitely my favorite, as again being a child of the 80s, I used to get myself home after school, and then I would make myself a triple decker peanut butter and cream cheese sandwich. I would get some toast and I'd cut two pieces of bread, slice each piece of bread in half, and I'd cover some of it in peanut butter and then some of it in cream cheese and stick it all together, and that would be like tea. Um, and so I remained on the bigger side, and I got to about 16, and I said to my mum, I'm getting the Mickey taking me out of my school, because not only was I big, I was also tall. I was pretty much the tallest in my school until the boys caught up with me at about age 15, 16. And even then, I topped out most of them. I was about the third or fourth tallest. So I stood out in all senses of the word. And so I said to my mum, can we do something about this, please? And my mum, caring about me deeply, took us off to Weight Watchers, because that's what you did. And I will give it credit. The exchanges system at that point, which was effectively low carb and low fat and high protein at that point in time, um, did me quite well. But of course, it's not sustainable. And I it trained you to basically use fruit as a savior food. And of course, now I know what I know now. Fruit just makes you hungrier. But of course, I was using fruit as a, well, I've got that. That is something I can use when I'm hungry to eat. And it really wasn't good. And the balances for my body, especially once I never actually got to the target weight they set me, because I was young. They gave me I think it was 11 stone 7 initially, and they said, no, because you're under 18, you should be 11 stone 11. And I think I got to 11 stone 10 and pretty much went all the way back up again relatively quickly, especially as I went off to university and tried to feed myself on like £2 a week, as you do when you went at that point in time. And that just led to not great choices, let's put it like that I see that now. And again, that's not blaming me for making the choice. I was trying to stick to plan, but I was just being hungry. And of course, you're then consuming excess alcohol, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes along with uni life. So I gave up on it. It's like, okay, I'm destined to be fat. Sod it. I don't care. I don't like being hangry. My friends didn't like me being hangry either. To the point of, if I would start to get a little bit irritable, oh, Nicola's getting hangry, feed her. So it was almost a protective mechanism for all of us to keep me calmer. And because I am not a pleasant person when I'm angry. And so generally speaking, that rolled on until I hit 29 or so, I think it was. And I tried various other bits and pieces in between. I tried to go back to using the exchanges. I picked up a couple of semi-starvation plans that looked like they should logically work, because of course I didn't know better at that point. And 29, chap at work called Tim passes me a copy of Dr. Atkins' New Diet Revolution and says, I think this might help you. Because at that point I had 52-inch hips, I ached, my knees ached, I was not a happy bunny, I had sort of lank skin and horrible hair and the whole 9 yards, and I was just tired the whole time, to the point of, at that point, I'd also started investigations with the doctor going, I'm tired all the time, what's going on? Come to that in a minute. And he gave me Dr. Atkins' New Diet Revolution. I read it, and because I love meat, I dived in feet first, and it really, really suited me. But of course, that focus is all on the food. There is nothing at all about mental resilience in that or any other diet book I'd ever read up to that point in my life. So when you go through the medical things and all the blood tests come back picture perfect, because apart from the being on low carb, I believe normalizing a whole bunch of stuff, me still feeling quite tired, I got sent off to a geriatrics consultant. I didn't know they were a geriatrics consultant at the time. I'm presuming because of where my ESR was elevated, they were going to test me for arthritis and stuff. And that guy basically said, well, apart from you being a bit overweight, Miss Howard, there's nothing wrong with you. Go away, essentially. 6 months after that, I got a letter. Please, can you go for a pelvic ultrasound? Out of the blue. So I thought, well, this can't be for me. I ignored it. A month after that, the consultant's secretary rang me up and said, did you receive the letter? And I played a little bit dumb first. I said, no, what letter? And she said, go for a pelvic ultrasound. You didn't attend. And I said, well, what do you mean? Why would I need that? The doctor's, the consultant's discharged me. And she didn't want to tell me at first, which is, I find, looking back on it now, this is when, in the mid 90s, I was 32. And eventually she said, well, the consultant had a brainwave. He thinks you might have polycystic ovarian syndrome, and he wants to send you for a pelvic ultrasound to have a look. Right, now, okay, I've got a reason. Let's schedule that in, get that done. So interestingly, the whole pelvic ultrasound, if you've ever been for one, ladies, you'll know exactly where I am with this one. Interesting times, with the longest condom I think I've ever seen in my life. And I had polycystic, the classic ring of polycystic ovaries. And at that point, I had private medical insurance with work. I worked for a bank at that point. And so I said to my doctor, look, I can't be asked to wait another month, 6 weeks, however long it's going to take to get me into whatever. Can I just go private for this bit? Now we know I need a gynae. Let's go for it. I got sent off to a Bupa hospital. Saw the consultant there, who was very lovely. We scheduled in laparoscopy and a hysteroscopy, which is basically they stick a camera inside your guts and inside your womb. And he said, and of course more blood tests, because your hormones are very good, Although I do not deny you have symptoms and you have a ring of cysts on your ovary, I cannot match that to polycystic ovarian syndrome. However, you have some dots of endometrial tissue on your sigmoid colon. Therefore, I'm going to diagnose you with endometriosis. So I got given a medical menopause at the age of 32, and there is no words other than I went batshit crazy. Crying all the time, cold, whatever, and I literally reached for the sugar and the chips, potatoes, and used it to self-medicate to calm me down, because I didn't have any other way of dealing with that. And given where I was at the time, I don't think I could have dealt with that any other way. And that then put me in the wasteland for about 10 years. Possibly even in a wasteland, because I gained about 3 stone instantaneously. I think the first 2 stone came on within the first month, and then the next one came on within the last 2. I then didn't have a period for a year, and then had a year-long period. And I believe, looking back, I believe I was probably clinically depressed, but no one followed up with me, because no one ever does follow up with you. And I was too stuck in my head to go and seek the help that I obviously needed. So I remembered after about 8 or 9 months of bleeding all the time, and I did not change my bed for 6 months, because there was no point. I was just going to bleed all over it. And I look back at my life and go, yeah, you must have been depressed. And
of course, yes. Who on earth wouldn't be?
Yeah. And I mean, the amount of iron I must have been losing, the whole 9 yards. And I remembered that the consultant said, well, if your periods don't normalize, because I've never had regular periods in my life, if your periods don't normalize, go and get yourself an IUD. Or I think he put it about, oh, we can consider using one. So I went off to the family planning clinic in Camden, got myself an IUD, and I've had a succession of them ever since, which now means I don't have periods, which is lovely. Except like I have a little bit of a pink sneeze. And of course, I've now got my final one, because they put my final one in 18 months ago, and that will now last me until I'm 58, apparently. But that whole wasteland of getting that dealt with, even though the periods normalized again quite quickly, as they do with the hormones in your womb, my mind wasn't there at all at this point. That was 2004. And I look back on that time in my life, and I really can't remember notable things. I remember around about 2007 or so, I had a chap that loved bicycles, and he got me into cycling, and my body liked the cycling, but I was quite heavy, and it was like, yeah, if I could just get back on being low carb, I could also get, but I'm not ready yet. I was enjoying the potatoes and the cheese twists and the whatever, and trying to make better food choices, but still including carbohydrate, lots of it. And he went off on a stag do in 2010. You see the notable blips I don't have within this time frame. 2010, he went off to a stag do for 3 days in Amsterdam, and I was ready mentally. So I'd got in the steak, the cream, the mushrooms, the broccoli, and I basically just went, right, I'm going for it, which is completely what I don't recommend to people to do now. But I went for it. I got myself back into a low carb place, and I broke up with him a little bit later, and then got myself into a relationship where we loved each other with food. And I started bullshitting myself all over again. And that's not low carb. So of course it didn't go back on all of it, because I have this lovely set point thing around 17.5 stone. My body loves 17.5 stone. No idea why. At my fattest, I was just under 20. My thinnest in my adult life has been about sort of 15 stone. So 17.5 stone is where I'd got myself back to. We broke up. And whilst in the last couple of years of our relationship, I was also in work looking at coaching. They were changing into a hierarchy style where empowered employees can make suggestions and feel comfortable with it. And so there was a lot of coaching, facilitation, negotiation, training that was happening at work. And I sort of went, oh, I quite like doing this sort of thing. And to the point of, in 2016, I went and got a coaching qualification. And it makes me laugh that my best mate, I told her, oh yeah, I'm training to be a coach. And she said, what's that? And she said, oh, it's enabling people to answer their own questions. And she said, oh, you're training to be yourself then, are you? Because I've always had that talent. So the qualification gave me these structures to help me allow people to transform and see their own issues. And of course, being a mentor has been there already. And so when I was recovering from sort of the relationships and whatever, and thinking, well, this just going straight gung-ho in doesn't really work very well. I need some structure. What can I do with that? And I started putting together a structure for me that was based, which turned into the Hope Protocol, which was based around effectively making the best choice you can, giving the resources you have. That's one of the coaching watchwords, is everybody is doing the best they can with the resources they have. And so I started constructing, well, okay, let's apply that to food. Because if you're making the best choices you can, given the resources you have, you're going to have the best body you can, given the resources you have. Logic, a very logical person. So I then started to construct, well, what is the best things I can choose? Looking at low carb stuff. And okay, so then that was when my focus shifted from just being low carb, 20 grams a day, very, very being keto attitude. What is it? If it fits your macros, towards food quality. And that's where I started to shift the focus away from, is it low carb, towards, is this going to nourish my body? And then that's where the Hope Protocol, the sort of the ONS scale was born. ONS stands for optimal, suboptimal, non-optimal, because it's OSN is far less of a mouthful. And between that and then, as I say, the 3 tenets, which are eat when you're hungry, don't eat when you're not hungry. That's very difficult, but it's true. And make each mouthful as optimal as you can, given the circumstances you find yourself in. Those sort of 2 things together sorted the food out, but then they started to work with the mindset. And where I'd been working with the coaching stuff and empowerment, this then sort of started to create the keys, which are the 10 keys that unlock your mind, is how it then became. But it's that whole using sort of things like the detached observer skill, questioning the messages we've been given when we were children. Does this serve me, is another big watchword of mine, and progress, not perfection. And so all of that then evolved, got concreted into my book, which came out in 2018, just up there, How to Do Low Carb UK Style. It then got named the year after. I asked my Facebook group, because I am absolutely rubbish at naming things, what can I call my system? And Bonita, the lovely Bonita, came up with, what about Hope? Healthy, optimal, purposeful eating. So that's where that came from. And that's where I've then created coaching programs, e-courses, group program, one-to-one, etc., all based off of that methodology. And it's helped thousands of people now.
And I love what you've set out there. I really do, because I mean, certainly my experience of, and this is what, I mean, I qualified as a coach about 20 years ago, and I did, I think, the same as you. I qualified in something called neuro-linguistic programming, which sounds like you've also done. And of course, at that time, everyone was simply setting goals around weight loss. Well, of course, it's a good idea. Yes, okay, set a goal, but a goal doesn't get you where you want to be, because it doesn't get you through each day, it doesn't get you through each meal, it doesn't, so people, whilst goal setting might be good for lots of other things, it's actually pretty rubbish when it comes to better health and weight loss, because people need to be able to get through each moment of each day, each meal, and they need to be able to plan their days as much as they possibly can do, knowing what might come up during the day and how are they going to deal with the mindset side of all of that, that is going to push them closer and closer to where they actually want to be.
Yes, and a lot of that, again, I acknowledge that totally, but I also acknowledge that by default humans are absolutely rubbish at planning. And so the framework, I have never created a set of rules, because I rebel. I don't follow rules myself. So why on earth would, if I made a load of rules, would anyone else follow it? The logic to that doesn't fit. So I created a framework, and that framework can fit your life. Because again, if you don't like beef and I love beef and I tell you to eat beef 3 times a day, you're not going to do it. Simple as. Whereas if I tell you to look for something that is protein based, nutrient dense, and you really love, you can choose whatever you like within that framework. And then there are other bits and pieces in the OSN scale too. So I'm very, very much about automating life as much as possible and giving you the structure support when it all falls apart. So I'm very happily, I mean, I've been doing my system for so long now. It is literally second nature, to the point of when I lost my mum last year, and it was a roller coaster I'd never ever even appreciated was be as horrible. And I am a food addict. Again, I've realized this in the last sort of 5-6 years as well. And I wanted to go and eat the chips, the ice cream, the whatever, all the things that made me feel better. And I was in the supermarket looking at the ice cream and literally picked up every single pot and went, which one is, and it literally took me 25 minutes to choose the thing that I was going to have an addictive whatever for. So in terms of that, it was definitely, and again, I had a bag of chips the night I registered my mum's death. I had the bag of chips, and then I drew a line under that and I moved on. Whereas I know that if I'd have not done any of this work on myself, I'd have been face first in all of it for ages and ages. And yes, over the last sort of year or so, I know that some of my choices have not been quite as optimal as they could have been, but I do know that they are far more optimal than they would have been if I hadn't done all this work and had my supportive framework to make the choices for me. So it's automatic. I go by bosh, 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 bosh. Yes. And the other stuff no longer exists. And it's part of this, the mindset stuff of shifting your focus so that all the rubbish, it's not an option. It doesn't, it's not even food. It is not an option to me. Why would I be buying it? It's wasting money. That is all work that you have to do mentally.
Yes.
And it's not instantaneous by any stretch of the imagination.
No, definitely not. And I think it is something that people are not talking about, but that you do have to work at. I mean, I didn't wake up one day being fully keto, fully low carb, whatever. You have to work at it. And there are times when you have to, if you're faced with a situation, you have to go with your best option, even though that option might not be, it might take you outside of what you would normally do, but as long as you're choosing your best option under all of those circumstances, there's nothing else that you can do.
Yeah, that's my tenant 3 in a nutshell. Make the most optimal choice given the circumstances you find yourself in. My good story on this one is that I work in IT as well as this. It's sort of been doing that since I was 18 or so. So whenever I hit a lean patch, back to IT contract, thank you very much. I was at SharePoint Saturday, and it was just around the back of the Albert Hall, and there are no shops. And I did not plan, so I did not eat any food. And by lunchtime came around with the sandwich, the baguette of crisps, and the apple. I ate it because that was my most optimal choice. But I'm not going to let that derail the rest of my life. And that, I think, is one of the big things to internalize is if you make a choice, you make the choice adultly, not as a little childish victim of, oh, well, I've made the choice now and I haven't got any power anymore. The food has the power. No, we have the power. We take the power and we say, right, well, I'm making this choice. And that's it. It's just that one time and I'm moving on.
Yes,
one of my clients, one of the testimonials I've got, she was saying, it's a revelation. I can put a chocolate bar down in the middle of it. I don't have to eat all of it, even if I've started it. It's like, no, you don't. Every single thing you put in, you can make a different choice, even if you're halfway through it.
Yes, exactly.
Empowerment is one of my big watchwords.
Absolutely, yes. And so how do you guide people? How do you start people off? Because somebody who's moving from a standard modern way of eating, maybe a lot of processed foods, and how do people get out of eating processed foods? Because I think processed foods in themselves are addictive, aren't they?
Oh, completely.
So it's not only that person is trying to change what they're eating, but they're also battling with this potential food addiction that they've got to the ultra processed foods. and not only the taste of them, but also the convenience of them.
Oh yeah. Oh,
So
definitely.
how do you think is a good way for people to try and overcome that?
My personal way of overcoming that is you tackle both sides of the problem at once. The food is the easy part. 6 weeks is how long it takes you to transition from eating a standard, horrible, yucky diet to a wonderful, optimal, low carb, healthy diet. 6 weeks in my system. And you do that sort of stepwise. So it's not all in all at once, because that gives us keto flu, makes us feel horrible, and makes us give up. Nah, not having that. That in the food in itself is a slow swap over, dialing down the carbohydrate, dialing up the nutrition, dialing up the satisfaction and the taste. But you have to do, and this is one of the problems with that book, is you've got part one is the food, part two is the mind, and loads of people read part one and stop. Whereas where I've been then coaching and teaching and group programming and whatever, I do both at once with people. So I then also tackle the habit stuff at the same time as the food stuff. So as you're slowly ramping down the carbohydrate, stuff is going to come up in your head. I call it the gribbity little toad. The gribbity little toad is going to cut kicking off and going, well, you're taking away the things I like. And so we then walk through various methodologies, have a really strong why. If you have no why, again, it's part of structure. If you don't know why you're doing it beyond to lose weight, which is a rubbish reason. And you talk about why that reason is so rubbish in my key 8, which you have to do the first 7 keys to really get key 8 to understand it. But in terms of giving the why of, well, I want to be able to be here for my grandchildren. I want to be able to fit the seatbelt on my flight. I want to be able to wear the dress for the occasion. But that one's not as good as I want to not have a heart attack. I want to reverse my type 2. I want to not have to take as much medication. I want to be here for the next 50 years. Those are much more optimal reasons. Reasons that have a negative, we tend to go back to. This is all about key 8. It's called a stuck structure, and I'm sure you've heard of this then if you've done NLP as well, where we end up being the opposite of what we don't want, which sounds like a contradiction. But if you want to be using money, it's easier. If you want to be rich and you believe you are poor, you will do things to get rich, but then you won't know what to do when you're rich. So your brain goes, no, I can't deal with that, woof, and gets rid of it all, and you end up poor again. So it's called an oscillating structure. Whereas when you rise above that, so I want to be healthy is my very short goal, vision. I want to be healthy. There's no negative to that, because being unhealthy is not something anyone would ever want or desire.
Exactly.
And it's also the default state of the human being. When we're born, most of us are healthy. So you start where that is, and your body knows what that feels like. Even with somebody within a disability or whatever, they know where their baseline is as they start. You come out brand new and the body knows what that feels like, and it will always try to be that. So supporting ourselves with healthy mindset choices is, I believe, more important than supporting ourselves with healthy food set choices. That's definitely important.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I always say that when people start any new way of eating, they're constantly stepping on the scales to see how much weight they've lost, when in actual fact a far better measurement, if you like, is how far has my mindset changed from how it used to be. So how has my relationship with food changed? And that's a far better indicator of whether or not you're on the right track than stepping on some scales or even measuring, I mean, I just don't think that's a really good idea. I think getting that mindset in place, because once that is in place and once that becomes your new way of thinking, the rest of it will actually fall into place. It's so much easier. And I think it's because we're so far into that, the we're so far into the side of highly processed food, high carbs, and all the really unhealthy stuff, that as we getting nearer and nearer to what is essentially healthy and real food, seems like too much of a step outside of our comfort zone. And so being able to look and ask yourself, am I thinking differently about food? How am I thinking about food when I go to the supermarket, when I'm thinking about what I'm going to make for dinner, for instance? And it's that's what matters. And if people spent more time focusing on that than on what the scales say, I think a lot less people would sort of throw in the towel, because they would realize that actually they can ask themselves those questions, which will help them a lot more.
I am a massive advocate of ignoring the scales totally. And I noticed you
Mm,
said lost earlier. I do not use that word in
mm.
regards to our wonderful, amazing body, because we are gaining so many things.
Yes.
And losing is always sad. We lose money, we lose things, we lose people. It ranges from sad and mildly annoying to utterly devastating. And I know I've got a whole essay around the word lost that has to fall out of my head at some point. So it's gaining vitality, gaining energy, gaining muscle, because we need that, gaining bone density, ditching our fat, burning it, removing it, getting rid of it. Words that imply permanent removal rather than
Mm,
lost, which has got a implied I want to
that's
find it
true.
again.
Yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
one of my real missions. But the other thing about not using the scale, it's just our relationship to gravity. And
Mm.
it can vary so much day to day. It, as you says, is a completely useless measure of progress. But we picked it 4,000 years ago. We are very, very wedded to our weight being our worth, which is utterly rubbish. Totally needs to get in the bin.
Mm,
So
mm.
I'm much more about using how I feel, what my eyes are telling me, how my clothes are fitting me. To tape measure, yes, definitely, because around the waist is definitely where we keep our visceral fat. But as you were talking, I'd actually say it's not even about how much my mind has changed. It's how much I've moved away from actually thinking about the food in the first place.
Mm.
Um, a lot of naturally thin people, I'm going to use those words in quoted commas, don't think about food. Whereas a lot of more people that are on the larger side obsess about food
Yes,
because they're
that is
normally
true.
hungry, because
Yeah.
they have been told to not eat as much as their body is
Mm,
requiring of them.
mm.
And so that whole, when you start that journey when you're younger, it's almost part of your identity. Where's my next meal? What's my next meal? How many things has it got in it? What's it going to be? All this, I call it just diet prison. And one of the reasons why I don't like being keto, I personally eat a ketogenic diet, but I'm not being keto, is because it's just swapping one set of diet prison rules for another. It's all weighing and stressing and faffing and TDEE, and oh my God, so much mental load. Whereas when you can put down the mental load, and as I say, where the way I designed the ONS scale is literally so it does the thinking for you. You do not have to think about the food. You just need to follow the framework, buy food that assists your body, and it will take care of it for you,
Mm.
because that's what its job is. Once we allow it to do the thing that it evolved to do,
Exactly.
it
Yes.
will do it. And that
Yes.
involves eating nutritious food, not things that have been made, because
Exactly. That's right.
they fool the back of our brain, and
Yeah.
we then will overeat.
Yes. And I think this obsession that we have with balancing calories in and calories out
Rubbish.
is absolute it's absolute rubbish, isn't it?
We
Um,
are not closed systems.
we
We
are
are not
not. We
on
are open.
calorimeters.
Exactly.
And we also,
We burp
the
and
yeah, but we also we are chemistry. We are not physics. So the mitochondria has no concept of a calorie at all. It takes glucose and it takes free fatty acids and it takes ketones and it converts them into adenosine triphosphate. You can't quantify that as something that you put in a bomb calorimeter and burn and see how much heat it produces.
no.
These two things just do not match. And the laws of thermodynamics are designed for closed systems. We fall into the second law, all open systems fall towards entropy.
Yes.
Rant. So we are not anything to do with calorie theory whatsoever as a mechanism. It just doesn't fit.
But it seems strange in a way that it's the food manufacturers who seem unwilling to give that up, isn't it? They just want to keep saying that it's about, counting calories and letting us know,
But
what's in.
I would say this is part of consumer need. Unfortunately, we as humans need simple structures. Calorie theory is utterly simple, totally elegant, and completely wrong. But it's one of those, the government has laid guidelines. We as a nation have followed those guidelines to the letter, the 1983 guidelines. We've literally followed them to a T, because we've asked the manufacturers to make foods that fit the guidelines. And unfortunately, the government is still invested in following its own guidelines, which we now know are, again, don't work for us as humans. So it's not that I don't think the food manufacturers want to let it go. It's more that we as consumers are trained to want that, because that's what the government tells us is healthy. So all the food manufacturers do is do what we want to buy. If we stopped buying it, it would not exist.
But what would have to happen for us to stop buying it? There would have to be a complete and utter change
Yep.
and I don't even know where that would start. I mean, how would it start?
There would have to be a new set of guidelines. So the Eat Well plate would need to get in the bin. And you can feel people's outrage about, oh my God, get rid of all the, because some of this also is, although we are nowhere near as litigious as they are in the States. If our government get rid of the Eat Well plate, we can probably get away with, well, yeah, oops, but the science, yeah, we're doing something different now. With Brits, we'd probably accept that, we'd be fine. If you do that in the States, the government would be sued 6 ways since Sunday. And so unfortunately, because we follow the States for better or worse, generally speaking, we may well be stuck with it with a little while. But the weight of science that is happening in the last 40, 50 years, because science advances one death at a time. People hang on to that. I mean, Tim Spector and Zoe is doing stunning work right now, but even then they're still in the calorie-ish bucket.
Yes.
Because it's like bless his socks, Tom what's his face, the
Watson.
guy that's doing, no, not Tom Watson.
Right.
Kerridge.
Tom Kerridge.
He of course he got on the low carb train, wrote a book about it, and then got effectively pressured by the BBC. Yes, if you want to keep working with us, you've got to not do that. Yeah. So he went, and of course he is now the size he used to be again, because he had to go back.
Yes.
So, and yes, of course, Tom Watson is doing sterling work in it's sort of now, unfortunately, he's left government. But again, that whole, there are these bright lights and bright spots. But when I started doing this in 1999, I likened it to a cruise ship. It takes a while to turn a big boat around. We're in a big boat. And when I started, we were full steaming ahead. We were not even thinking about turning around. I actually think we are at the tipping point. And we will either course correct and turn it around. That's probably going to be another 20 years or so. Or we won't, and we will just keep going. And then the health will just be...
because the worrying thing about that, of course, is certain people want meat wiped out completely and want plant-based protein. Yes. Which is just crazy, because how on earth can anybody possibly get the necessary nutrients? And it's just not real food. It's just not real. Well, so
you can argue that. I mean, I am completely against veganism. I will not assist a vegan unless they are going to at least consider being ovo-lacto as part of the coaching experience. It is very, very possible to get the amount of macros that you need to live as a vegan, but the amount of fuss you have to do to get it, you have to take supplementation, and the amount of food miles that goes on your food, like substances, to get you that, the amount of processing that needs to go into it. Give me a steak any day, thanks.
Exactly.
Make sure that steak is reared on green grass, thank you very much. Make sure that cow has had as good a life as it can have. That's where I think us and the vegans have a very simpatico attitude there. Animal welfare is a big thing. Healthy animals that have lived a long, lovely life are tastier animals and better for us. And they turn grass that I cannot eat into meat that I can.
Yes.
So as being as ethical as you can and acknowledging that for something to live, something has to die. I am part of the animal kingdom, and I am not a prey animal. I am a predator animal. I have eyes in the front of my head. I have pointy teeth. I have proteolytic stomach. Meat is part of my evolution, better or worse. So it is the choice I make.
Yes, of
I don't
course.
believe that vegans. I actually believe veganism is the biggest health threat in the 21st century. I think the
Mm,
cholesterol was the 20th, the whole
yes.
cholesterol myth.
Mm,
Um, but I think veganism is definitely the biggest threat we've got to health going on right
mm.
now.
I think so. I agree with you. And I just wonder, I mean, it just seems to be so loud, that call for people to go vegan,
Mm.
that I wonder how on earth we're going to turn that around. Because if you go to a supermarket and it's just, I mean, I'm not saying that supermarkets don't sell meat, of course they do, they sell plenty of meat, but there seems to be this constant pressure, particularly on young people as well. I find, they young people, like school age children from say the
Meat-free
age of
Monday.
about 13 up to about 19, and they are the most vulnerable. They're so vulnerable, and that's a time in life when you you need to be eating more
Mm.
protein. You need to be thinking about what you're eating, and
Yeah.
eating a vegan diet is just, it's hopeless.
Vegan children do not thrive. That has been
Yeah.
shown time and time and again. And also the meat-free Mondays things on school dinners. I am very thankful I don't have kids, because if I did have kids, I would go in and I would say, you are not feeding my child on
Yes.
meat on Mondays. You are just not doing it.
Yeah.
If I will send them to dinner, I will send them to school with a packed lunch if you're going to do that.
I mean, it's
Um,
very difficult, I think, for parents, because on the one hand, you've got the problem with veganism, and then on the other hand, you have parents who are sending their kids to school with a very high carby lunch, which is terrible.
mm,
So I think there are so many areas that need to have a greater understanding of what
cool.
is good nutrition and what the human body actually needs to thrive. And it just seems like any inroads that are being made, there seems to be very slow, very slow.
I mean, some of this. So if we, I am no expert, as I say, I've got no kids, so I don't have the now experience of school. I had my experiences at school lunches, but when you look at what the kids appear to be being fed, and I mean, like Jamie Oliver's thing with the whole, and Marcus, what's his face, footballer, what the kids are being are effectively empty calories that keep you running but don't nourish your body.
Mm.
Whereas I remember back at when I went to school, we got meat and veg and potato and a pudding, and there was a good nutrition content within that meal. Whereas these days, it's very easy for a child to go, can I have this, can I have that, and end up with a plate of beige, because they
Yes.
don't have to actually take a protein. And of course, all the fats are now low fat stuff. So all the fats, whereas when I went to school,
Mm.
they didn't really worry about that. They just cooked. They got the meat in, they got the whatever in, they put it on a plate, and
Yes.
out it went. And there wasn't nearly as much of a, again, this is where I believe we've done ourselves a disservice, going back to the whole nutrient thing. Food is not nutrients, food is food. It is a
Mm.
package that we eat. And where we've done ourselves a disservice with this lovely, we need to break it down and analyze everything. It's one of the reasons why I believe the cholesterol problem happened, is because we discovered how to fractionate it. And we've discovered how to count things, therefore we must go and measure it. And it's the same thing with, we discovered that food has micronutrients, macronutrients, it has calories, and it has fat, carbs, and protein. And oh no, you just need to make sure you get an arrangement of this to make sure you are healthy. hence fortified cereals and fortified stuff and
Mm.
whatever. Because when you grind stuff or you process it, you take stuff out of it, so they put stuff into it, but that's not how nature made it. I'm a great proponent of nature knows exactly what she's up to. She makes
Yes.
things, she makes food. Like, you need the fat in the milk because that liberates the vitamin D and the calcium.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, this is it, because if you eat real food, your cells recognize that. They know exactly what to do
To
with
do
it.
with it.
If you eat processed food, your body, your cells are still waiting for the food to come in. They're still waiting for that. So it's going to send you signals. Your body's
Please,
going to send you signals of, give
please
me
eat.
more. Can you
Please
eat?
eat. Please eat.
Yes,
And you could have eaten a banquet of white bread, chips, biscuits, popcorn. You name
exactly.
it. The bits and pieces, a little bit of
Exactly.
whatever, or so, sunflower oil, all that stuff. You could have had food like substances out the wazoo. You could have
Yes.
eaten 4,000 calories, but
Yes.
you'll still be hungry
But you're
because you've
still
not actually given
hungry.
your body what it
Exactly.
needed.
Exactly. And yet we're talking about that here. It's so simple, and yet people find it incredibly difficult to
No.
overcome the mindset side of that, because it's been so conditioned into us.
Yeah. Well, you
Um,
a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, the 80s were a fun time and a good time and a horrible time. 80s gave us where we are now in terms of both parents are now have to work. It's not even an option anymore. If you want a mortgage, you need 2 salaries.
yeah.
And sometimes you need even 3 or 4 salaries, given where we are with that. But you need both parents to be working, so you can't spend as much time on cookery. Your rent now costs, I think it's over half of our salary on average these days, where it used to be around about a quarter. So there's less money to spend on everything else. That includes food. So when you are then thinking, well, what's the best bang for the buck I can get out of what I've got left in my purse to buy the family its dinner? Okay, well, that's the cheap stuff. And the cheap stuff is the stuff that isn't real food anymore. And a lot of that started in the 80s with we want convenience, we want things we can throw in a microwave. I am all for the microwave, they are fantastic. But the whole, again, this is about consumerism driving what manufacturers make. We ask them, please, will you make this, because this is what our lifestyle demands. Meanwhile, you've then got, well, why is our lifestyle bit? There's a whole bunch of intersectionality going on here. And
And
so I am a
sorry, go
great
on.
fan of shopping around the outside of the supermarket. Every single low
Yes.
carb guru says it. You don't go into the middle. You don't buy it. I look at something, and if it hasn't got an ingredients list on it, cracking, I'm probably going to buy it. If it has, for me, I look at the ingredients and go, well, tonight I can't be asked to cook, so I'm going to pick up this packet and I'm going to look at it and go, could I make that at home? I don't have time. I don't have the desire to make this. Could I look at the ingredients and go, yes, I could, if I wanted to, I could make this. It's got real food in it. There is nothing in this label that is a chemical or a weird E number or whatever. I mean, everything is a weird E number, but it's that whole, I could, oh yes, that's got meat and tomatoes and onions and garlic, herbs, bit of sugar, bit of salt, bit of vinegar. Yes, I could make that. So I would buy it if I wanted to. But if it is something that is just packaged and things that what's emos meant of diosai what, yeah, no, I'm not touching it personally, but that's my choice.
Yes, yes, of course. And I think you can understand how it is so confusing for people, because on the one hand, I mean, I know this is what when I would go into a supermarket before I was low carb and keto, I would just assume that everything that was for sale in the supermarket must be okay for me.
Well,
Otherwise, it wouldn't be sold in there.
it's not going to kill you, let's put it like
Well,
that.
I disagree. I think it is going to kill you. It's just going to kill you very
Well,
slowly.
this is the difference between toxic and acute. We care massively about acute toxicity if it's going to kill me now, whereas we don't care at all about chronic
No,
toxicity.
no.
It's going to kill me in 20 years. And again, that's
Because
part of the way human brains work. We don't
because
care
somebody
about what's going to happen in the
somewhere has a pill for that. That's the other thing that we think, isn't it?
future.
Nothing in the supermarket is going to be bad for me. Whatever happens, there's a pill for it. Somebody else can sort my life out for me. So I'll just buy whatever I want to buy, and just go with the consequences, because there's always going to be somebody else who's going to be giving me a pill or making things
Lovely
better for me.
Anthony Bourdain quote. That's why I take Lipitor. Because he went around the world and he ate and whatever.
Yeah.
He said, yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I take Lipitor,
Yeah.
a statin. And it's that whole,
Yes.
funnily enough, deprived because he was suicidal because he was depressed.
Yes,
Low
exactly.
cholesterol, the whole
Yes.
thing. But yes, it's that whole, nothing is going to kill me in this supermarket today.
Mm.
And we therefore assume that the food safety, which is obviously not the same as the food healthy, but
Yeah.
food safety means that anything we buy in a supermarket is not going to kill us right now.
Yes.
Some of this is down to, again, I did home economics when I was at school. I learnt about food. And I know they do it these days, but I believe that it's a lot different. It's not about how you cook and how you provide and how you feed people. It's more about the macros and the nutrients and the things that, again, divorce us from our food. And I learned about, when I was a kid, I learned that food comes from a farm and off of an animal or out the ground and off of a tree. And the amount of people that don't know that where their food comes from. Oh, it comes from the supermarket. Where does the supermarket get it? Don't know.
Exactly. It does feel like we have, as a society, we've lost that link with the outside world, really, haven't we? With
We've
not
forgotten that
only
we are animals as well.
exactly, yes. And I think, the rise of the ultra processed food that you were talking about, it's driven by, people just wanting to be able to fit eating within their busy lives.
Oh, yeah.
So you can understand why ultra processed food has gained in popularity.
That, and if you, I mean, again, this is the intersectionality of how much money you have. But like you and I probably look like we have from quite privileged backgrounds. I have the money to go to the shop and spend 60 quid on food a week. That's my budget. That's for me on my own. And I would imagine some of your listeners will be going, 60 quid a week, my God, that's my whole family. And then there are people where it's 60 quid a month. And at that point, what is going to fill my belly? And that is unfortunately pasta and rice, and maybe a tiny little bit of protein, some stock cubes. I've done that too when I was at college in my 20s and feeding myself up a pound a week. Save up my money, buy a bag of frozen vegetables. And it's a hard conversation to have, because yes, I can bang on about food quality and whatever till the cows come home. But if you are not with the resources, that conversation is unattainable.
What do you do?
Yeah.
Yes. And for a lot of people, they live in an area where there is nowhere to buy fresh food.
Not as bad here as it is in the US, though. Nowhere near as bad. We don't have nearly as many food deserts as the US does at all.
Right.
But yes, that definitely fresh food. Although, I mean, you've then got the argument of something that is a frozen vegetable is fresher than a fresh vegetable.
Yes.
So,
It's
I've never seen,
point.
especially, I've not seen that as much of a problem here, because almost everybody is within a couple of miles of a supermarket here, rather than 2 or 3 hours drive.
Yeah. And really that takes us back to choosing the best possible option, no matter what your circumstances are. So, maybe you can't afford to go to the butcher's, but you can afford to get some fresh meat from the local supermarket, even though it might be the cheapest meat. You can still do that, and
Dropping all the yellow labels.
that is going to be better for you than buying processed food. And a lot of the time, making your own food can be quicker than actually heating it, than taking it out of a packet and heating it. Yeah.
It's a big thing around when I love cooking. I always have done. And having a client who couldn't cook, and it blew my mind. It's like, well, how do you, I can make an omelette in 13 minutes, start to finish, and then I've got I get half an hour for lunch with my day job at the moment, so I can go in, cook my omelette, cheese, ham, possibly mushrooms, onions, peppers, a little bit frozen peas, maybe, depending on what I'm in the mood for. 13 minutes in the bowl to the plate, and I'm unfortunately then back up at my desk I turn and then I sort of eat my food at my desk because it's the best place to eat anyway. But I've also got the email on, which is not the greatest for the mental health, which,
Yeah.
given what I work for, is strange, but never mind. And it's that whole, I have that ability. It's one of the good things about having my stepfather. He taught my mum how to cook, and then they taught me how to cook. So I have that natural, one of the very positive things that came out of my childhood is the ability to know this will go with that, and that goes with that, and that don't go with that, but this does, and it really shouldn't, but it does. And so being able to just put things in my fridge, which is what that book actually talks about, Control Your Low Carb Week. Having lists of things that I buy by rote every week. My shopping list always has these things in it. And either like short term, medium term, or longer term, depending on how perishable they are. And again, this is part of automation. So I buy the things, and I've always got things that go together. So I look in the fridge and go, right, what do I fancy? I'll have bosh, 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 done, 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 bang, I'm away. And I'm not into things, unless I plan it, that take me hours to cook, unless they are literally things that are planned to be like beef shin and
Yes.
things you bung in a pressure cooker, beef broth, the whole thing, that's again planned.
Yes.
But also, I mean, talking about where I was on universal credit just before my mum, the year before my mum died, I'd actually gone all in on the business on low carb in the UK. And then of course the pandemic hit. Nobody wanted to give me any money. So I then ended up on universal credit, thinking, well, where can I spend my money on? And the one thing I did not compromise on was my food. Yes, I didn't spend as much on my food, but going, she said, going to the butchers, you go to the butchers and say, well, what bones are you throwing away? And then basically I'd get the bones and I'd roast the bones, eat the meat off the bones, and then make bone broth for free. And that was blinding. In terms of what I could then get available to me to work my resources. Yellow label shopping, getting things and putting them in the freezer when I did get the money at the beginning of the month. So when I run out at the end of the month, Alexa, shush. When I did run out of money, I had food and I could eat. And I also had friends that supported me, and my partner was very supportive. So I bumped through. But it's definitely, I was lucky. I had resources. I had people that would support me.
Yes. And it must be very difficult for people who are going to, say, food banks. I mean, I just don't know how somebody going to a food bank can possibly, it's all carbs and just totally without any kind of goodness in. I mean, a packet soup that can't contain any goodness whatsoever.
Almost certainly not.
And you wonder,
but it'll keep you alive for today.
Well, it'll keep you alive for today. Yes. So it's very short term, really, isn't it? It's a very short term way of looking at something. Yes, I agree. So would you say, who is your typical client?
I assist women struggling with ditching their belly fat. Generally speaking, people come to me because they want to lose weight, but go away from me transformed in life, because they realize it's not about losing weight, it's about gaining their life back.
Yes.
Generally speaking, it's the ladies between 30 and sort of 60, the ladies that have got a bit out of love with themselves. And that's one of the reasons why they're not nourishing their brains, they're not nourishing their bodies, and they're not eating in a way that nourishes them, because everything else is coming before them. Very, very typical. Looking after the kids, looking after hubby, looking after school things, looking after whoever, and they're not looking after themselves, and they don't realize they aren't, because of course part of female socialization is that everybody else comes first.
Exactly. Yes.
So I'm very big into allowing us to assert our boundaries, empower ourselves, and be authentic to ourselves, so that we can then serve all the people we need to serve.
Exactly.
You cannot give from with an empty cup.
Yeah. And how do you talk to your clients about fitting that in with a family lifestyle? I mean, perhaps they want to have a go at going low carb, but how do you do that within a family lifestyle?
Well, this is how long is a piece of string? What is your family shape? Sometimes your families are supportive, sometimes they're not. There's a lot of kickback about, I can't make my kids low carb, but you don't have to make them low carb. Just give them better quality food.
Mm.
And by giving them better quality food, even if you don't change yourself, you're going to eat better quality food, because you're improving your child's nutrition by basically dialing back on the sweets a bit and emphasizing maybe sweet potatoes or even normal potatoes for kids. They don't need to be low carb. They need to be no junk.
Yes.
So
Yes.
even if that, just by stepping your kids towards better food, you step yourself towards better food.
Yes.
And you will notice a change. You become more vibrant as you eat real whole food.
Mm.
You gain the vibrancy of the food.
Yes.
And then you think, well, and then you then become to be in a place, well, actually, yeah, I can start. And as the kids get slightly older, you can then start making the tweaks that bring you to where you need to be. Sometimes it has to go as slow. As long as we keep going, it doesn't matter how fast we go.
No, exactly. And do you do one-on-one coaching, or do you do group coaching? What do you find works best?
Yes, is the answer to that. I do one-to-one. I love one-to-one. You can go really, really deep with people, and we clear out so many things that are not at all food issue based stuff, because how we do anything is how we do everything, and it's all related. So there's a load of assumptions that we clear out, a load of that is getting in our way, that we just go in and get rid of all that rubbish. There is also, for completely different reasons, the power of the group. I love my group program. You don't go anywhere near as deep with those people, but you go broad, and they all support each other. And then, of course, there is nothing to stop someone that is in my group coming and working with me something on deep. And there's also a lot of my one-to-one clients have gone, well, I need you in my world, Nicola. You're wonderful, but we've cracked this. I don't need this intensity right now. So they move to my group program, and they stay in the world, and then they start being the guide for other people as well. It is such a joy. I had a coaching call 2 weeks ago, whereas someone was talking, and then all of the group started just giving them, oh my God, and it made me feel so good, because I could hear all the things being given to this person, all the love, all the support, all the wisdom that I built in, and it's they're so lovely. so for that's also very satisfying for everybody in a completely different way.
Yes.
So I'm all about acknowledging that, again, we are where we are. Most people cannot afford to go in deep and one-to-one, because it is by necessity a premium program, whereas lots of people can afford a group, but then also might not be ready for that, because again, I'm going to go in and I'm going to change your mind. And when people don't want to change their mind, there's nothing I can unfortunately do to pull them the way I need them to be.
It. Yeah, this is what the problem really is, isn't it? I think is when people want to change, but they don't want to change. They want a different outcome,
yes,
but they
I want to do everything I'm doing right now, but I want to be completely different.
But you want to be, yeah.
but again, not everybody is ready to make the necessary internally looking, and I do believe where this goes, this will follow.
Yes, I agree.
If you do not change, if you do not do the work between your ears, I will see you in my free group coming up again and again going, I'm starting again, I'm getting a handle on it, I'm getting back on the wagon. It's like, mate, there is no wagon. Just learn how to frame it, and you will never need to fall off the wagon again, because there isn't one.
And how do you help those clients who have just got into that routine, that sort of really bad habit of the negative self-talk, that was never because they weren't doing things properly. It's simply because they listened to what they were told by, say, the government or the healthy eating plate, or whatever it might have been, and then always thought that it must have been their fault. And over the years, they've just grown into the habit of that negative, like you were saying, like that horrible negative self-talk. How do you begin to kind of chip away at that?
You follow the trite answer is you follow my keys. We start looking at those messages and give you the support to realize you are not your thoughts. And the people that hear that sometimes get it, sometimes don't. Again, you are where you are. But it's that whole, once you get the handle on you are not your thoughts, And then you can listen to yourself, have a thought and go, but is that truth?
Exactly.
Is what I've just thought actually backed up by evidence and facts and
Yes.
reality? Or is it just something that I've believed because
Mm,
someone's told me?
mm, exactly.
And some of this sounds very, very woke about do your own research and all that stuff, but it is literally around the amount of people that start doing low carb anyway, by anybody's system, start to feel really good, and they're concerned others go, oh, but you're eating all that fat, it must be bad for you, because of course what they've heard, and then they stop believing what their body is telling them, and they go, well, yes, I have to. Again, someone that came to me for a while and effectively then got influenced by the others in her life and stopped being low carb, because although she was
Mm,
feeling amazing, they were telling her it was not good for her. And then
yes.
about 8 months later, she came back and said, yeah, you were right. I need to do the mental work, don't I? Because she hadn't started doing the mental work yet.
Yes.
She'd
Yes.
come in
This
for
is the
6 weeks,
thing.
done the food bit, and
Mm,
didn't even begin to do the work up here, and just
ah,
and bailed on
yes.
the program.
Yes. Yeah. And I think like you were saying before, the food side of it is almost the easy side
Yeah.
of it, because weight loss follows better metabolic health. So the weights, as you get more metabolically healthy, the weight's going to fall off anyway. But the hardest part, I think, is the is changing and keeping that change of that mindset.
Two things there. Your body composition changes. So the scale might actually stay the same, but you will become healthier. You will gain
Mm,
muscle and ditch some fat. They will be the same on the scale.
mm,
Lots of people come to me with that fear of the scales are not moving. It's like, yeah,
yeah,
mate, you're putting stuff back into your body that has
mm,
been removed by not eating nutrients. But also that whole um, any diet will work if you could do it forever. Anything would work for you. The definition of work there is a bit suspect, but any diet would work if you could do it forever. The body will not allow you to starve yourself forever,
no.
and it's one of the things where there are a couple of programs out there that effectively teach you how to be anorexic.
Oh my goodness,
And
crikey.
there are literally some very mainstream programs that I
Wow.
won't mention in case,
Mm,
but yeah, if you look at their plans, they are literally teaching you psychological tricks to starve yourself with.
wow. That's
And
scary.
it's horrific, and it's sold as all this lovely
Mm,
friendly food, and it's like
mm, mm,
and it needs to get in the bin, it needs to be destroyed with fire. Because the way to maintain a change is to know that you feel amazing and you want to keep feeling amazing, and the things that are not making you feel amazing, you have to find out over time, because everybody is different. It's
yes.
like, I cannot eat nuts. Lots of other
Mm,
people can, not a problem.
mm, mm.
Almonds for me, bloat like a drum. Oh my God, they are not part of my life. And I had to find that out for myself the hard way, by realizing that
Mm,
when I stopped eating almonds, I felt a lot better. But it's that whole, you have to find out for yourself what your own personal triggers are. Some things are going to make you feel zingy, zingy, amazing. Some things are, even
mm.
if they are low carb or nutrient dense or whatever, they might not make you
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
good. They are not optimal for you, which is why the ONS scale is not a set of rules, it's a framework. Because
Yes.
something that's optimal for me might not be
Might not be able
optimal
to,
for you.
exactly, exactly. Everybody is different. I mean, I ate cheese for years going into, I mean, actually when I first went low carb, I ate loads of cheese.
Mm.
And wasn't until didn't eat cheese for about 2 weeks that I realized how much better I felt. And this was years after having
I
having
think that they will
loved
drag
cheese.
cheese out of my cold dead hands. I eat cheese most days, but it's one of those, I really need to do the experiment of having no cheese for a while. But I
Mm,
do know that if I go more towards eggs and cheese, I get lazy and do like cheese omelets every day for
right.
lunch.
Yeah.
I feel less vibrant than when I'm putting red meat in my diet. I am the person that can't not eat red meat. I have to eat red meat.
Absolutely. Yes.
Um,
Beef and
beef,
lamb.
yeah, beef and lamb, and I'm feeling top of the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah,
If
I
I'm if
agree.
I'm getting lazy and going towards having omelets, I'm not feeling as good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, and again, that for me, you have to feel where your own vibrancies are, and
Yes.
this again is where the sliding scale
Absolutely.
comes
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. And what I tend to find as well is, for me, it's beef. Say beef mince, because it's a bit cheaper. Beef mince cooked in beef dripping. Oh, I just feel incredible. I
Mm.
just feel absolutely, and I feel better doing that than I would do cooking it in butter, cooking it in anything else. Beef mince cooked in beef dripping, and I just feel it just incredible.
Mm.
Lamb cooked in beef dripping, it's just, I don't know, it's almost like to me it's like a superfood dripping.
Mm. Oh well, you can give a whole bunch of reasons as to why, with the essential fatty acids in it. There's a whole bunch of, if you want to get really deep in the weeds, why butter again is a superfood in terms of lauric acid and a whole bunch of
Yes.
essentials that are not in other
Mm,
places.
yes.
And again, the quality of things like the cholesterol in beef and lamb fat is much more
Mm.
plentiful than it is in other fats. So fat is our friend. Fat is amazing. Ruminant animals are also awesome.
Yes.
And I think where I've done the OSN scale, fish is very awesome as well, I think too, but it's not as awesome as meat.
No.
And then you've got eggs and cheese, which again I feel are generally wonderful, but they are not optimal. If you want to go right at the top of the scale, they're not up there, but they are up there.
Yes.
It's like going out, isn't it? And then of course everything else beyond that, it is that quality blend of proteins and fats that really are what this needs.
Mm. And do you think it has something to do with our genes, do you think? Because I've heard some people say that they feel best when they eat chicken, but
Mm.
or fish maybe. So do you think it has something to do with where we've come from? Sort of whereabouts in the world that we might have come from. In other words, what our ancestors have eaten.
I am no expert on this, but logically, yes. Because if you are evolved in a place where you had lots of caribou, Inuits, Eskimos, whatever up there with the
Yes.
seals and the whatevers,
Yes.
whereas I know one of my ex-partners loved fruit and felt brilliant on eating loads of fruit.
Mm,
Me, I can take it or leave it, and it's
mm,
not a main feature, and it really doesn't do anything for me at all.
mm.
And they actively got very flumpy if they didn't. I mean, they ate low carb, but they also needed a little bit more fruit. Whereas me, no thanks, I
Yeah.
don't even. It's
Yeah.
not going to bother me.
Yes.
But of course, they where they evolved in the planet um, was plentiful, equatorial, fruity,
Yes.
whatever. So
Yeah.
so definitely we are. This is where I hate this bit because it sounds racist, but it's really not, because everybody deserves to be where they ended up. But because of imperialism, we can go and blame them, and people not being where they should be on the planet,
Mm,
that in itself has now stocked up a whole bunch of issues around vitamin D availability, around best nutrition for where your body is.
yes.
So definitely, I think the epigenetics of that. Genetically, we're all so identical, it doesn't matter. The fact that
Mm,
I produce
mm,
less melanin than some people, it's irrelevant, immaterial. But the epigenetics of, like, I come from Irish stock. My nan
mm,
was a
mm,
Northern Irish lass, so of course she got the potato famine out of hers. I
mm,
I have a shaped by that famine body.
mm,
And that is very, very quick epigenetic stuff.
mm.
Because I know if I look at a potato, what is it? That looking at a cream cake, you gain 10 pounds?
Yeah.
There is actual truth in that utterly fallacious statement, because there are some people, Richard McCann talked about this in the 60s in his book, the burns everything body type, the fattens easily
Oh,
body
yeah.
type, where if I eat food that encourages my body to produce insulin and lay down fat, it will. Whereas if someone who is a burns everything does the same, they will not store it,
Yeah.
they will burn
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
And that is all about evolution, I believe.
Yes. Yes. I think so too. I think so. I think there's definitely something to be said for that. And I think also because there is people are getting more concerned now, interested in just eating locally. So eat whatever
Mm.
you want, but it has to be local. Well, how do you feel about that?
I'm incredibly enthusiastic about eat locally, eat seasonally, as
Yes,
much
eat
as you can.
seasonally. Yes.
Um, I was carnivore from January 2019 up to March 21, when Mum was a bit more sick than I realised, and I just couldn't deal with being only meat. She had enough problems with me just being low carb. So when we ate together, it was easier for me to just go back to omelette and salad, or meat and salad, or whatever.
Yes.
So I stopped, and I haven't yet got back onto. I love broccoli, I love onions, I love mushrooms. I'm not ready to let them go again yet.
Yeah.
But in terms of that whole, my food then came from within like 100 miles of my house, because I would go to the farmer's market, or I would go to M&S, where I know, again, they can trace it from cow to shelf. Because M&S was my local supermarket, and that makes me sound so upper class, it's unreal. It was literally where I lived. It was where I got my food. So everything I knew where it came from, it normally came from the Midlands somewhere, or Wales, or whatever. So it was all like 100 to 150 miles of my house. I refuse to buy asparagus at any other time except March and April, because Peru and Kenyan asparagus just doesn't taste as good, but it's come from halfway around the world, and no, I can't be bothered with it.
Yeah.
I do love an avocado, and I struggle with the fact that they come from somewhere that is not here at all. And when I'm eating, I have an on and off struggle. Chocolate is one of my addiction substances. If it's in my house, it's in my stomach, so I must not have it in my house. But if I am buying chocolate, again, that's coming from halfway around the planet. But generally speaking, if I'm buying broccoli, or I'm buying mushrooms, or I'm buying onions, they are being grown within Britain or Ireland. Occasionally Spain, I'll give you Spain, it's relatively close, but it's definitely not far.
Yes.
And again, it's that whole eating as seasonally as we can. And given the fact that these days, we've completely lost up here. I've got the Valentine Walton books, what to eat now, what to eat next.
Yes.
Acknowledging that even 40 years ago, you couldn't buy oranges at certain times of the year. You couldn't buy swedes. You couldn't buy various bits and pieces that we can all year round now.
Yes.
Because we've broken seasonality.
Exactly. Yes. I agree. And I'm sure that the body is used to eating certain foods at certain times of the year. So even if you just did that, even if you ate seasonally and locally, that's surely going to be better than what a lot of people are currently eating.
Well, you've also got the thing about, and I've done podcasts with other people on this, around, we're coming into autumn. The body wants to get fatter for winter right now. So you're going to be hungrier.
Yes.
And then again, the mind gets in the way and goes, oh no, we can't eat more, because that is bad and wrong, which I don't use that language at all when I'm coaching people, because we're not bad, we're just following what this is asking us for. And having some of that acknowledgement of, we are as cyclical as the seasons. The best time for our bodies to ditch fat is actually winter, January to April, when theoretically food is lean. So we want to be eating less after the great feast of the winter solstice back in history. We have the great feast, and then we are on lean rations again until things start appearing on the trees and the animals come out of hibernation, and we start being able to kill things with slingshots and pick them off bushes and do whatever again. And then, of course, we come into the abundance of summer. We get fatter for winter, and around it goes.
Yes.
So eating locally, eating seasonally, allowing our bodies to do what they want to do, acknowledging that it's not going to change however much I want it to sometimes. You can't bully your body. Your body will always win in a fight against you. But what you then do is acknowledge it, get on board with it, and work with it.
Yes.
Because that's all we can
do. Exactly. And it kind of sort of brings me into the next sort of question that I wanted to, or topic that I want to discuss with you, and that's how the importance of self-compassion, really, and because it's so incredibly important. Whatever change you want to make in life, self-compassion has got to be there, and for so many of us, we find it so difficult, don't we? I mean, we can be very compassionate to everybody else, but we're just not very good at being self-compassionate.
Well, again, some of this comes down to standard female socialization, where everybody comes first, but there is a whole bunch of being selfish. Being selfish has a very bad rap. I call it being ethically selfish. The dictionary definition of selfish is to do something to the detriment of someone else. Whereas I believe being ethically selfish, doing something for me that will then help my fellow man, that's the best thing I can do.
Yes.
And it's a shame that the word selfish has become this horrible thing, because I am actively selfish all of the time, making sure I eat well, I sleep well, so that I can be the best I can be to serve the world.
Yes.
I would be useless to everybody if I didn't sleep enough, eat enough. It would not be fun times. So it's that whole, and once you start getting on board with being ethically selfish, that involves then asserting boundaries, which again, women are taught that flexible boundaries is a fantastic thing because it benefits society.
Yes.
So starting to enforce our own boundaries, but using better, this is all coming down to better language, our NLP stuff, whereas I can't do that, I'm on a diet, is quite possibly the worst boundary ever.
Yes.
I don't do that. No thanks, I'm good. I choose not to do that right now.
Yeah.
Whatever better language. And of course, as a society, they're going to go, are you sure? And then you go, yeah, I'm sure, thanks, I'm good. And then
You know, I
people,
think you're so right. I mean, one of the words I hate the most is willpower.
oh,
And I think
Five is
willpower
all about
has
willpower.
no place in better health. And, you know, it's some construct, I think. It's meaningless, completely meaningless.
Key 5 in my system is all about willpower, because it's never there when you need it. And willpower is basically a finite energy we all have to get stuff done. And when we are using willpower on things that are irrelevant, unimportant, and non-nourishing to our lives, like having to decide what to have for dinner, that stock of willpower that we need to not kill our children, or get that project done, or go out and get the best thing we can get, whatever, that willpower that we've spent recklessly and needlessly will then not be there when we want to not make the choice to not eat the cake. That's too many knots. It will leave us at the point we need it the most, because we've been relying on it. So again, part of the reasons I set my structures up is to make that reliance on willpower redundant. Because when you've got a structure that supports you to make the decisions for you, you don't need to spend the willpower on deciding whether you will or you won't eat that thing, because it's this, it's optimal, it's good. And so a lot of that around self-care, self-love is all around those boundaries of no, I'm not, I'm good. And then of course, how you then, when your others start to talk to you, because they're used to you not having hard boundaries, and how you can then effectively use your willpower to resist their pressure, rather than having to use it to resist something that you know you should not, something I don't want to, no I shouldn't, but I will, instead of giving in because it's easier or whatever. I said no, I'm good. And then the more you do it, the stronger your boundaries get. Everybody loves good boundaries.
Yes.
The whole of society is improved.
Exactly.
Ecologically sound stuff.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you. Yeah. So just drawing this to a close now, if somebody tomorrow wanted to maybe put a toe in the water, maybe start with low carb perhaps, or maybe a change of mindset, what's the one thing that they could do, just the one thing that they could do just to put a toe into the water?
There's 3 things that I think that they would profit from, is ditching out sugar, ditching out wheat, ditching out seed oils.
Yes.
Of the 3 of those, I would actually try to ditch out the sugar.
Right.
If we're being more self-promoting, buy my book, and or come and find me on the socials, and have a conversation with me.
Yes. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for sharing all the amazing information with me. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much.
You are more than welcome.
And hope to speak to you again soon.
Oh yes, I'm always up for a good conversation.
Good, lovely. Well, I'll have to get you back on again, because I feel that there's a lot more that we can talk about. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nicola. Take
You're more than
care.
welcome.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.